Hello, greetings everybody. As you read in the title, today we're going to talk about why Haplogroup E, J, and T, and how they fit the biblical timeline. Okay, I think this is going to be a little long-winded, but I think I have good information on here. And if you're interested in the topic of paternal lineages, Y chromosome haplogroups, I think you're going to enjoy this one. All right, before we get started, I wanted to go through a few disclaimers that I have. I want to say that I am a Christian, and that this right here is just only a question of curiosity, and whoever the nation of Israel is genetically, may God bless them. And this is not intended to exclude or to be hateful to anyone, okay? Also, I believe that the nation of Israel today is fully the nation of Israel in full representation, carrying the flag of Israel and fulfilling biblical prophecy. And I think that every single person that has ever converted to Judaism is fully grafted into Israel, okay? So the fact that there are more than a handful of lineages amongst the nation of Israel today, or Ashkenazi Jews, or any other Jewish community anywhere, I don't think it disqualifies them as being Israelites at all. They are still Israel, and I think the Bible supports this. And I want to quote a couple of Bible verses that I think support my position, okay? First, Genesis chapter 17, verse 13 and 14, God tells Abraham, and I quote, "He that is born in thy house, and he that is bought with thy money, must needs be circumcised. And my covenant shall be in your flesh for an everlasting covenant. And the uncircumcised man-child, whose flesh of his foreskin is not circumcised, that soul shall be cut off from his people. He hath broken my covenant." Okay? And I got another one. And by the way, in case anybody says, well, that's not Israel, that's Abraham, that's two generations before, it was different. Well, this next verse is for Moses, which is way down the line in the genealogy of Israel, a descendant way down the line. So this is from the book of Exodus, where he's telling Moses instructions on how the law fully applies. The Israelite, the law of the 12 tribes fully applies to the strangers that were amongst them, all right? And I paraphrased that before I read it, because the part where it says strangers amongst them, or strangers among thee, is going to add context to another Bible verse that I'm going to quote later on, okay? So that you know who the strangers amongst thee are, okay? But here it goes. Exodus chapter 12, verses 48 and 49, it says, and I quote, "And when a stranger shall sojourn with thee, and will keep the Passover to the Lord, let all his males be circumcised, and then let him come near and keep it. And he shall be as one that is born in the land. For no uncircumcised person shall eat thereof. One law shall be to him that is homeborn, and unto the stranger that sojourneth among you." Okay? And I'm going to add to that I believe that every single Gentile that accepts Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior is also grafted into the nation of Israel. Okay? But just because these verses are true doesn't mean that there's a promise with genetic Israel. There is. There is a promise with genetic Israel. This is not replacement theology, not in the Old Testament and not in the New Testament. Okay, God has a promise with genetic Israel. Otherwise, we wouldn't have had Jesus Christ come through the line of Judah, down through the line of David. We wouldn't have had, the priestly tribes of Levi. There's a promise with the nation of Israel. all the way down and through to the end of days. In the book of Revelations in chapter 7, verses 4 through 8, where Jesus has 144,000 men marked, 12,000 of each of the tribe of Israel by name. I literally believe that that's exactly what it means. 12,000 of each of the tribes of Israel by name. Okay? And also in chapter 21 of the book of Revelations, verse 12 and 13, when that great city of New Jerusalem comes down from the heavens, and it says that there's 12 gates, that each of the gates has the name of each of the tribe of the sons of Israel, it means exactly that. Whether it's just an honor or a part of the, city that is only for them, whatever it is, I believe it means exactly what it says. And it's not to say that people from the other nations of the world cannot go into New Jerusalem, because it says that they do. Okay? So no one is excluded. Everyone has chance of salvation. Okay? And just one last thing. We're mixing two worlds here, science and our faith, right? And I think that's perfectly fine to do that. But, I believe in God, and if I have to choose between God and science, I'm going to choose God every single time. And in this conversation, there is a conflict in the timeline, right? So in the Bible, you know that we have something called chronological genealogy. So chronological genealogy tells us how long a person lived and the age that he was when he had the next generation, right? And it daisy chains from there all the way down. And in the Bible, we have that from Adam all the way to Joseph and Mary. And with this chronological genealogy, we can calculate. And, there's a margin of error with each generation, because you don't know what part of the year of that person being that age that he begot his child, right? So, but approximately we are at around 6,000 years on this chronological genealogy from Adam to present. And that's what I go with. I don't go with we came from monkeys and the first anatomically modern human lived 200 or 250,000 years ago, or even, I know they keep moving it back 300,000 years ago, whatever it is at now. I don't believe in that. I go with the Bible. Okay? And not only do we all come from Adam, I believe, but more specifically, we all come from one of the sons of Noah. Whether it's Shem or Japheth or Ham, we all come from one of those three men, right? After the flood, okay? After the flood. So every man alive today was chosen by God, is a lineage chosen by God to have survived the flood. So all the information of Y chromosome data that we have today, there is no one that has a haplogroup that came from a Nephilim or from devils or demons or reptilians or aliens, or any of the people say crazy things. And I don't think that's true. That's not biblically, that's not true. We all came from either Shem, Japheth, or Ham. Okay? All right. That being said, let's jump into it. All right. First, I'm going to go through the Hamitic lineages. Okay. So starting with one of the sons of Noah. So again, Noah, 3 sons: Shem, Japheth, and Ham. And we're going to start with Ham. All right. Ham had 4 sons. Okay. Cush was one son. Another son was Mizraim, that is also known as Egypt. It translated to Egypt in the Greek. Okay. So when you hear Mizraim, we're talking about Egypt, and vice versa. So we have 4. Number 1, Cush, also Mizraim, also Put, and also Canaan. All right. And I believe And I'm going to explain why. I believe that these biblical lineages align with Y haplogroup E. Okay, haplogroup E is very common in Africa, including North Africa. Okay, and very common in tribes that have oral tradition of being Cushitic tribes, are dominant in haplogroup E. Okay, also haplogroup E has been found in ancient archaeology in Egypt, including Pharaoh Ramses III, whose predecessor, Egyptologists agree, when posed with a question of picking the best pharaoh to fit the timeline, even though, I have pause with that. But, they pick Ramses as the pharaoh of Exodus, okay? And last, and most importantly, or significant, I believe, is that E haplogroup is the very earliest haplogroup that has been found in Israel's genetic archaeology. E haplogroup is the earliest haplogroup found in Israel's genetic archaeology. Okay? And what does the Bible say? Okay? In the Bible, the first people to be in that region were the Canaanites. Not the Israelites. It was the Canaanites. Okay? So, if haplogroup haplogroup E is the earliest haplogroup found in Israel, and in the Bible, the first people that we have living in this region is the Canaanites, then haplogroup E must be the Canaanites. Okay? And I want to share a Bible verse that, supports this. Okay? This is in Genesis chapter 12, verse 5. Okay? And I quote, "And Abraham took Sarai his wife, and Lot his brother's son, and all their substance that they had gathered, and the souls that they had gotten in Haran. And they went forth to go into the land of Canaan, and into the land of Canaan they came." Okay? So, yeah, that's what I think. The first people to inhabit this region were Canaanites, and the earliest haplogroup that we find in the archaeological record of Israel is haplogroup E. Then E haplogroup must be the Canaanites. And if E haplogroup is found in ancient archaeology in Egypt, and including the Pharaoh Ramses III, then, Mizrahim must be haplogroup E. And if people that have the tradition of being a Cushitic tribe are dominant in haplogroup E, then haplogroup E must be Cush. And all of these are Hamitic. So I think the haplogroup E is a candidate as it stands today as a Hamitic lineage, haplogroup E. I want to share some that you could look up yourself, that you could Google yourself. You can use Google and look these up. These are sample IDs for some of the fossils that were found in the ancient archaeology in this region. Okay, so sample ID Natufian 5 is the name of it. Natufian 5, dated 12,000 to 9,500 BCE. Okay, then you have sample ID Natufian 9, dated 12,000 to 9,500 BCE as well. Then you have sample ID Natufian 10, dated 12,000 to 9,500 BCE. Okay. Then you have sample ID Ain Ghazal 84-1, dated 8,300 to 7,900 BCE. Then you have Ain Ghazal 84-2, dated 8,176 to 7,608 BCE. Then you have sample ID Ain Ghazal 83-6, dated 7,741 to 7,755 BCE. Then you have Baja 22, dated 7,500 to 6,500 BCE. Pardon me. Then you have the most recent Pekin 1171, dated 4,500 to 3,500 BCE, which, by the way, was one of the samples that was sequenced amongst 10 other samples at that site, Pekin cave site, where the other 9 samples were Haplogroup T, except for this one sample I just mentioned that was Haplogroup E, okay? And I'll also mention, I think it's significant, that all of these samples that were found at Pekin cave were in ossuaries, okay? Who else has a burial tradition of using ossuaries that I know in that region? Only the Jews. Okay, but anyhow, all right. So, yeah, for all those reasons, I think that Haplogroup E today, and we know these things could be a moving target, but as it stands, I think that the evidence shows that E Haplogroup may very well be a Hamitic lineage. Okay, all right, moving on. All right, but actually, I want to show you, before we do move on, I wanted to show you something in the FTDNA website. Hang on. Let's see if I could look it up here real quick so that you could see Haplogroup E and the Discover tool. This is the Discover tool. It's very, very good. And here you could see some of the samples that I just was talking about. You can look them up on here. But you know, you could Google this anywhere. But it's very nice that they have everything, all this information compiled here in one place for everyone to see. This other tool in the Discover tool shows us the distribution. You can see that Haplogroup E is heavily concentrated in Africa, okay? And we're going to show the migration route as well. They have here, pardon me, I'm sorry. Okay. And here you can see the migration routes that they believe. And again, these things are moving targets, okay? But that's how they, and what they say is that E split and had a major split between E1B1A and E1B1B. They consider E1B1B the branch that went into the Levant, and by the way, is the branch that is found amongst Ashkenazi Jews today, not E1B1A. E1B1A is found in West Africa and South Africa, but E1B1B is a lineage that is found in the Levant, although at low numbers, but it is found in the Levant, and it is found in Ashkenazi communities. Okay, let me just show the frequency chart again. So, as you could see, in the Levant, 14% Saudi Arabia, let me see, 9% Iraq. We know that J haplogroup is dominant in this region. Oh, let me see if I could get Jordan on there. It's hard to do it from your phone, but if you're on a desktop, it looks much better. Okay, Iraq 9%, Saudi Arabia we established 14%. Oh, look at that. Yemen 16%. Okay, but most of that is E1B1B. You do find E1B1A as well, but it's at a far lower. I think it's about 3% in Saudi Arabia. Anyhow, all right. Let me exit this. All right, moving right along. All right, actually, let me open this up again so that we could use it for J as well. Hold on, give me a second, bear with me. All right, so talking about haplogroup J haplogroup has a lot of good points. or in their favor in this conversation as far as being considered Shemitic and the Israelite haplogroup. Okay, for one, it is a haplogroup that is found at the highest frequency in the Middle East, and also it is a haplogroup that is found at the highest frequency amongst Ashkenazi Jews, albeit both J1 and J2 together. But even in the highest estimates, I've seen as high as 48% of Ashkenazi Jews as being either J1 or J2, either. But yeah. And then also, J haplogroup is found amongst many rabbis that have been found in different communities around the world, by the way. There was a study on that. It was very compelling and very good point to their favor, I have to admit. And they call it the Kohanim haplogroup. And also there's a lot of notable families amongst J haplogroup that are Jewish, okay, including a lineage that is very, very, and I don't know how they established this, but I believe that they have established that there's a rabbinic lineage that goes back to the 1400s that they have proven it's Y haplogroup J as well. So on the top, it looks like J haplogroup would be the one that is the Shemitic and Abrahamic lineage, right? Let me put on here. There's one of these tools that shows you these lineages. Look, Bennett Greenspan is on there, and you'll see all the notable people that are in the haplogroup. You could do this with every haplogroup, by the way, on here, which is awesome. Look, Rothschild family is a Jewish family, and right here you could see that rabbinic lineage. They say go back to the 1400s. So, which is very interesting. However, my question is, or the issue I rise is, if haplogroup J was the Shemitic line, was the Abrahamic or the at least the Israelite line, wouldn't it be a minority in the Middle East rather than a majority, right? And after so many conquering of that land, so, and how does it fare as far as enrichment? So if Ashkenazi Jews, you see estimates as high as 48% being haplogroup J, how does that fare when you compare it to, what the frequency in the Middle East is? Is it an enrichment or is it not? Is it overrepresented or underrepresented? Saudi Arabia, 68%, higher than 48%. Let's see. Yemen, 76%. Oman, 72%. Iraq, 62%. What else we got? Egypt, 53%. Yeah, so that's what I asked, and I think that point, the fact that it's very frequent in the Middle East, and the fact that I don't think that there's an enrichment, are actually points that work in favor of haplogroup T. Okay, as we'll see later on, but no doubt there's good points. No doubt there's good points. However, we know that the 10 northern tribes, we know that after going through the captivity in Egypt and in the book of Exodus, leaving and having to fight the Canaanites and having to fight the Moabites and many other people, including themselves, fracturing into two different kingdoms, right? The kingdom of Judah and the kingdom of Israel, that was 10 tribes, right? That they call the lost tribes. They were lost, right? The Assyrians came and conquered them and absorbed them and carried them off to different places. and then came Babylon, conquered and took the Jews into captivity out of the land to Babylon as well. Then came the Persians. So that's the question that I pose, okay? Just to consider. And then remember, in 70 AD, they were completely expelled from the land. So they're not even supposed to be there, right? All right, that's all I'm saying. They have great points. It definitely can't be debunked, but I think that there's things that we could talk about, T, that you might find interesting. Okay, and with that, we're going to segue to Haplogroup T. All right, so Haplogroup T. All right, I'm going to bring up 5 points why I think that Haplogroup T should and actually, I'm sorry. Let me track back a little bit. Let me backtrack. Just 1 second. Okay. The point I just made about the frequency. I want to say that in the conversation of Y chromosomes, we've even heard this before. For example, Genghis Khan, where they say that his lineage and the lineage of his men basically took over and dominated, and they have so many descendants across the Far East, right? So we have that example, and we also have the example of the discovery of the Americas, right? We all know that, and people that research Y haplogroups, Y chromosome studies, know that the haplogroup that is common amongst native populations in the Americas, right, tribes, is haplogroup Q in the Caribbean and South America and Central America and North America. Haplogroup Q is what you find in these tribes, right? And, we know that the Spaniards and the English, came to America and colonized, and definitely you can see easily, this is haplogroup R that I put over here, as you can see, R, okay? And you can see the signature of R. You can see how it's dominant in Europe, 62% in France, 65% in the United Kingdom, Portugal, 49%, Spain, 50%, Germany, 47%, right? So, and then you see it dominant in the Americas. We came over here to the United States, we brought haplogroup R, and, that's the signature that you see everywhere. You could even see it in West Africa, hang on, like Cameroon, 24%. Like, how did that get there, right? Well, because they were colonizing, they were conquering territory, and look at the Caribbean. By the way, look at Cuba. 56%. There's almost no Taino DNA signature there. Most Cubans that do DNA tests hardly have, lucky if you have 5% Taino DNA, right? Because they were, in an island, they hardly have anywhere to go, right? But yeah, you see, I'm trying to hit Haiti. 64% in Haiti. How does Haiti have all that European lineage at a rate of 64%, right? When it should be E, probably. And so that's what I'm saying, that it should look like for J in the Middle East if they were the Shemitic or the Abrahamic lineage, right? But it's not. So, anyhow, that's the point I was trying to make. You be the judge and decide. All right, we're going to move on to Haplogroup T. Just give me a second to set it up here. All right, so as I said before, I'm going to make 5 points in favor of Haplogroup T that I think, might be compelling evidence. The first point I'm going to make is that Haplogroup T is the second haplogroup to be found in Israel's genetic archaeology. It is the second. And of course, biblically, we know that the first people there were the Canaanites, and and Abraham went onto that land that was called the land of Canaan. Then came Isaac, Jacob, who was Israel's 12 sons, including the father Israel, ended up in Egypt. We all know that if you read the Bible. So they took their signature into Egypt. Everyone, all the 12 sons of Israel, including Israel, went into Egypt, and they come out in the book of Exodus with Moses, right? And they come back to the land that is still called the land of Canaan. Is still called the land of Canaan. So the first people there were Canaanites, and the second people were Israelites. And that's what I was making the point before about Haplogroup E. The earliest haplogroup that you find in Israel is Haplogroup E, and the second haplogroup is Haplogroup T. So I think that it's another piece of circumstantial evidence. However, it aligns up with Israel. E being the first found aligns with the biblical timeline that the Canaanites were the first there. And T being the second haplogroup found in Israel's archaeology lines up with, Israel coming and taking the land from the Canaanites. Okay? I don't know, just something to consider. The second one is that T haplogroup is agreed to have, most people, most genetic companies, most scientists have said, is from the Middle East, originated in the Middle East. Okay? So, and I'm talking about FTDNA, that is the very first company to offer commercial testing, which, by the way, would happen to have been Y chromosome testing, and that, by the way, they have the biggest database as far as quality, high-resolution testing. That's FTDNA. If you really want to find out about your lineage and dig deep, you need to test at FTDNA. 23andMe is a great deal, but and they give you your haplogroup, but high resolution and robust database for Y chromosome, FTDNA. What FTDNA says, I said in the other video, and I showed you the migration maps. Origin is in the Middle East. It's the same thing that 23andMe says. And 23andMe, I showed you the migration map, and 23andMe is the biggest database that has Y chromosome testing. So we talked about how they have upwards of 15 million people in their database, and that even if you presume that half of them are men and half of them are women, it still accounts for millions of people being in that database. And based off of their testing and the frequencies that they attribute T Haplogroup to being from the Middle East. Okay. Also, even Spencer Wells, when he was working with National Geographic, they had a DNA company called what was it called? Geno 2.0, I believe, and he attributed T to the Middle East. And it goes even Arizona professor Michael Hammer as well. So, and it goes on and on. So that's another reason 2. And reason 3, I think, is pretty compelling. And it is that Haplogroup T is found in many Jewish communities around the world, has been found, okay? And at a rate that is higher to what is found in the host country, okay? We're going to go over some numbers, but I just want to say, it's one of the first things that jumped out at me when I was doing research on Haplogroup T, okay? And although T haplogroup is only found at 3% amongst Ashkenazi Jews, again, that's already a disparity when it's found at low numbers at, 1, 2, in Europe, it's already a disparity, right? But in other Jewish communities, this is even more obvious. And at the time that I was looking at this and debating in forums, I had no idea that there was a guy named Nathaniel T. Jensen that he's a PhD, and he wrote a book called Traced. And actually, whatever haplogroup you are, you should probably consider buying that book, because there's a lot of good information on there. And by the way, spoiler alert, he concludes that off of the data that he has, that T haplogroup is Jewish. But anyhow, I did not know that about his research at the time, but it's good to know that I'm not the only one noticing. Okay. But going on to the numbers, okay, it's very interesting. Outside of Somalia has the highest frequency as a country, right, of haplogroup T at 14%, okay? And they're home to tribes that have even higher numbers. There's a tribe called Deer Clan that has 100%. They tested 24 men, and of the 24 men that they tested, they were all haplogroup T. Of course, but at a national level, it's only 14%. Okay? And I want to say that, only second to Somalia. And although these are small communities, the highest averages that you'll see of haplogroup T are going to be amongst Jewish communities. Think about that. Not just the enrichment, but when compared to host countries, but also the highest percentages of T haplogroup outside of Somalia and perhaps the United Arab Emirates, And I always question, I don't know how other people don't see this. I mean, can lightning strike once? Yeah. What about twice, 3 times, 4 times, 7 times? At some point, you got to say, hey, there's something here. Okay, so let's go over these numbers. Again, I said outside of Somalia, the highest numbers you'll see is in Jewish communities. Remember, Somalia, 14% at a national level, and yes, some tribes in there have even much, much higher, even 100%, but national level, 14%. Okay, but here are some other communities. Okay, in a sample set where they tested Sephardic Jewish men that believe through oral tradition to be Levites. They tested 31 men, and of the 31, 7 were Y haplogroup T. That's 22.6% haplogroup T. All right. In Iraqi Jews, they tested 32 men. 7 were Y haplogroup T. That's 21.9% amongst Iraqi Jews. 21.9. And the country of Iraq as a whole, they calculate about 7%. They estimate 7% haplogroup T. So that's a big enrichment, okay? Kurdish Jews, they find them at a rate of 19.2%. That was a sample set of 99 men, and 19 of them were haplogroup T. And to compare to the host country, only 8.5% of men in Kurdistan are Y haplogroup T. Okay, in a different sample set of Kurdistan, where they tested this time 50 Kurdish Jewish men, 18%. And again, they only find haplogroup T at a rate of 8.5% in Kurdistan. All right. The Lemba tribe that has oral tradition of being Jews, they find 17.6% of men in the Lemba tribe are haplogroup T. And the signature of haplogroup T in Zimbabwe is literally 0. It's like not found, non-existent. In Portuguese Jewish men, a sample set of 57 men, 9 were haplogroup T. That's 15.7% haplogroup T. Where in the country of Portugal as a whole, you only find haplogroup T at 3.3%. In the Assyrian community, men today that say are of Assyrian heritage, right? 15.1%. Remember, the Assyrians absorbed the 10 northern tribes. And amongst Assyrians today, you find haplogroup T at 15.1%. Isn't that interesting? That was a sample set of 106 men. 16 were haplogroup T. Okay? In a different sample set of Assyrians, that was 28 men. 4 were haplogroup T. That brings it down to 14.3. But still, whichever sample set you go with, it's still very, very interesting. Iranian Jews, Persian Jews, Iranian Jews, 13.6%. That was 3 out of 22 men. And as a whole, in the country of Iran, you find T haplogroup men at the rate of 3.4%. And it just goes on and on. Sephardic Jews. Among Sephardic Jews, you find haplogroup T at a rate of 6%. In the country of Spain, that was home to the Sephardic Jews, you only find it at 2.5%. Moroccan Jews, you find haplogroup T at a rate of 5%. And Morocco, as the host country of Morocco, you find haplogroup T at 0.6%. Isn't that interesting? Ethiopian Jews, you find haplogroup T at a rate of 4.5%. But the host country of Ethiopia, you find it's a little closer, but 3.7%. But still it's an enrichment. Okay. So yeah, I just find that very interesting, and I think that's a very compelling point to the favor of T. All right, and I'm going to make my fourth point here. T haplogroup is spread all over the world at a very low frequency. And you could see it here in the map. Somalia has a big 15%. Sorry, I had said 14%. 15% Somalia, okay? But the United States, less than 1%. Brazil, 2%. Algeria, 2%. In Europe, Germany, 1%. Just a low signature everywhere, right? And that's really interesting, because you do have haplogroups that are rare, and you do have haplogroups that are widespread, but the combination of the two is very unique. It's very unique, okay? And I want to quote a Bible verse from Deuteronomy, okay? In Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 62 through 64, okay? And I quote, "And ye shall be left few in number, whereas ye were as the stars of the heavens for a multitude, because thou would not obey the voice of the Lord thy God. And it shall come to pass that as the Lord rejoiced over you to do you good, and to multiply you, so the Lord will rejoice over you to destroy you, and to bring you to naught. And ye shall be plucked from off of the land whither thou goest to possess it. And the Lord shall scatter thee. The Lord shall scatter thee among all people, from one end of the earth even unto the other. And there thou shalt serve other gods, which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, even wood and stone." Okay? So in this verse, it's clear that it says that the nation of Israel, because of their backsliding, will be left few in numbers and scattered, right? And I think that's exactly what we see here. I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm biased, but I think that's what we see here. Okay, and remember, Israel was one man. Another point, Israel was just, we're still on the fourth point, but he was just one man in a populated region. He was 11 generations down from Shem. So from the moment of Israel, he's already a minority, right? And they were a people that were persecuted. Born boys of Israel were killed in Egyptian captivity, so their numbers were always kept low from its inception, always fighting local enemies, Canaanites, Philistine, Edomites, Moabites, fighting the Egyptians again, even fighting, as I said before, amongst themselves, dividing into two kingdoms. And the northern kingdom was the 10 northern tribes and then the kingdom of Judea that had the tribe of Benjamin within them, right? And then came the Assyrians that conquered and absorbed the 10 northern tribes, carrying the remaining Israelites to foreign lands, as was the custom, to detach people from their identity. Okay, hence the lost tribes of Israel. And note that T Haplogroup is found at 15% amongst people that identify as Assyrians today, as men that identify as Assyrians today. Isn't that interesting? Then the kingdom of Judah was conquered by Babylon. That was in 586 BCE, and taken out of the land to Babylon. And they did come back. The Persians let them come back when they took over in 539 BCE. At least they went back to the land. But then came the Greeks under Alexander the Great and conquered them in 332 BCE. And then finally, in 63 BCE, the Romans conquered Judea and ultimately expelled the Jews completely from the land in 70 CE. Okay? So, based off of this record, historical record, I think that we're looking at a people that should be a minority, right? Anyhow, you be the judge. All right, and then my last point, my fifth point. The fact that T is not even considered by most in this conversation is not a disqualifying point. It's actually prophetic, and it actually bunks T as the haplogroup of the Israelites, in my opinion. And this is a Bible verse that I think supports that. Pay attention. Listen. This is Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 43 and 44. Okay? The stranger, remember that we talked about earlier, the stranger in the Exodus verse that I shared, how the stranger among thee, should be, become Israel, right? Well, the stranger that is, Deuteronomy 28, verse 43 and 44, and I quote, the stranger that is within thee shall get up above thee very high, and thou shalt come down very low. And he shall lend to thee, and thou shalt not lend to him. And he shall be the head, and thou shalt be the tail. Okay? And, with that, I don't know. I hope you were entertained by this. I hope that, this gives you something to think about. And I'm interested to know your opinion. What do you think? Does it make sense? Is what I'm saying make sense? And, I'd look forward to seeing some of your comments and help in this conversation and think about this. All right. Well, with that said, thank you for watching, and you all take care, and see you next time. Bye.